Hey guys, what is going on? It's your old pal CHH drinking iced coffee out of my Nightmare on Elm Street tumbler that my wife got me. This thing's really cool. Alright guys, so you seem to enjoy the last video, so I'm going to do one more. This is the volume 2 of the best 80s horror sequels. Now, I kind of let the rules be a little laxed on this. There's going to be some more part 2s in here, but there's also going to be some higher numbered sequels. So this will probably be the last top 10 80s horror sequel video I do, because doing like one for part 3s and part 4s would get really difficult, and I'd really be grasping at straws, so why not just end this on a bang? We'll do more. We'll do 90s after this. If you guys want to do 90s, I'd be glad to do that. Or just the top 10 best 90s horror films. Just let me know down below. But let's get started. Another top 10. Let's take this journey together. Alright guys, number 10 is actually another part 2. I gotta give it up to Poltergeist II. Now, I've gone on record saying this is my favorite Poltergeist film. I actually think it's just a scary, good movie. That demon thing that comes out of the dad's mouth at the end is just disgusting. This one is more... I mean, don't get me wrong, after getting the 4K for Poltergeist, I'm a big fan of Poltergeist, but part 2 is what I really consider, like, the horror movie. And, it's just a meaner movie. It's like a meaner movie than part 1. I just really, really dig it. Poltergeist 2 is one of the greatest. I even like Poltergeist 3 as well, despite the sad hardships that happen with the girl dying and having to finish the movie. I still think Poltergeist 3 is pretty fun, but part 2 is awesome. Alright guys, so coming in at number 9 is my boy Freddy with 1988's The Dream Master. You gotta have The Dream Master in your top 10. Screamin' Mad George's special effects work, along with John Carl Buechler's work, is amazing. I actually consider The Dream Master to be one of the greatest special effects movies ever. Scene for scene, this movie just delivers on so many fronts. One of my favorite scenes of all time is the cockroach house thing, where the girl's arms turn into the bug arms, and oh, she's in a little cockroach box and Freddy squeezes it. And then also the meatball pizza, the soul pizza, if you will. Just incredible. The chest of soul stuff in 4 is just out of this frickin' world. I mean, part 4 has some of the best. Also, the soundtrack, I say this all the time, but the soundtrack to part 4 cannot be topped. You've got bands like Go West, the Divinals, Sea Hags, Vinnie Vincent Invasion, Joe Lamont. I mean, you can't beat part 4's soundtrack. I love it to death. So part 4 has to be in my top 10. Coming in at number 8 is also another fan favorite, my boy Mikey, in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. You know, for all the complaints that this film could have with the hardcore fan base, as in terms of the general audiences go, I dare say if I showed any of my friends or my bandmates, Cold Canyons is my band, by the way, look us up, if I were to show them Halloween 4 in the series of the franchise, they would probably all say, oh, that one was really good, that one was like just a good horror film, and it's hard to argue it. Part 4 is just so good. I mean, I love... having a kid actor in a movie like that that performs so well is just an anomaly. But yeah, Danielle Harris Halloween 4 could be her best performance ever, which is just crazy considering she was a little kid. Not that she's a bad actress by today's standards at all, but she was so good in Halloween 4, and I love the look of Michael in that film. I just prefer the big, monstrous Myers. That's always scarier to me. The music is great. Alan did a really good job of updating the score for the late 80s, so Halloween 4, it's gotta be in my top 10. Alright guys, coming in at number 7 is now our boy Jason. I went back and forth on which ones I could pick, and you might see more Friday the 13th in this list, but at number 7, I gotta give it up to Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. What a hell of a sequel. This is a film that just blends comedy and horror so well, and again, let's talk about the soundtrack. You get not 1, not 2, but 3 Alice Cooper songs. That, maybe I'm biased considering he's my favorite band rocker in the world, but damn it, man. CJ Graham does an amazing job as Jason, and Tom McLaughlin just killed it, giving this movie the correct blend that it needed to really revitalize and keep the ship afloat. Even though Part 6 didn't break the box office in terms of the franchises, it actually kept things going with the momentum that the series needed, because without 6 being successful, there probably wouldn't have been of 7 or 8. So the good word of mouth probably got people back into the theaters, and Jason Lives needs a lot of credit because it not only resurrected Jason, but it really resurrected the franchise. Part 6 is awesome. Coming in at number 6 is actually a part 2. Gotta give it up to Don Coscarelli's Phantasm II. Now, I almost put this in the previous list, but I went back and forth. Like I said, the first episode, I blended movies I loved along with what I thought were the best. But the truth is, Phantasm II probably should have made it somewhere on that list, but it's here today. Phantasm II is not only a great sequel, it's my favorite Phantasm movie. I love it. I think the guy that plays Michael in this film is really good. Not that I dislike the one from the rest of the series that comes back, but Reggie Bannister is at an all-time high here as this middle-aged superhero that I still can look up to now. The practical effects in this are out of this world. There's this amazing scene where like this demon thing comes out the back of the girl, and it's disgusting. The tall man is at his best in Phantasm 2. This movie is all that and a bag of chips. Giving Don Coscarelli some money was the best thing that this series needed. Phantasm 2 is the closest one that makes any sense, and it's one of the best sequels ever. Coming in at number 5 is also a number 2. I gotta give it up to what I consider to be a sequel that is better than the original, Amityville Horror 2. What a hell of a sequel. The cast in this one is so good. You got Diane Franklin in here, and you also got Uncle Paulie. I forget the actor's name, but he's from the Rocky series. He plays the dad in the family, and he is such a good, drunk, angry dad. Such a performance. I've always loved Amityville 2, and when I have younger viewers ask me, hey, do you like this movie, or what's a sequel you like better, I usually tell them, well, you know, Amityville Horror 2 I think is better, and they'll say why, and I'll usually say because things happen in that movie. But a lot more happens than you bargained for. Amityville 2 is just one of those movies you watch and you're like, holy crap, am I watching this? Like, this is happening? Because the stuff seems like the kind of things that would get cut out from the producer standpoint, like, oh, we can't do that. Or that's a cool, but we can't do that. But they do it in Amityville 2, so go check out Amityville 2 if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a long time. This movie goes for it, and it deserves all the praise in the world for it. Coming in at number 4 has to be Freddy yet again. We've got to put the Dream Warriors in here. What a hell of a sequel. Now, a lot of people will say that the Dream Warriors is the best A Nightmare on Elm Street film, or it's the fan favorite, so to speak, and that actually comes from Robert Englund himself. And if anybody's going to be able to say what they think the greatest is, by the fans' perspective, it would be Robert, considering he meets hundreds of thousands of fans a year. What do I say about Dream Warriors? It's got some of the best music, greatest cast, greatest Freddy lines. It's perfect. I love the Dream Warriors, and quite frankly, I wouldn't change a damn thing about it. Coming in at number 3 is what I consider to be one of the greatest slasher films of all time, Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. Yeah, Ted White is one of those Jasons that you just gotta be scared of. This guy is menacing. His anger of being in this movie at the time really portrays well through the screen. Corey Feldman as the kid in the film is just awesome. I love the cast. This has my favorite final girl in the series, quite frankly. There's great music, and what a movie. You get to be just enveloped in the cast and the kills more than almost any other slasher film I've ever seen. You just fall in love with everybody in this movie for having such a genuine, unique personality, and when Jason shows up, you better put your seatbelt on because he is wrecking shop. Part 4 is possibly the best the slasher genre has to offer. I absolutely love The Final Chapter. Coming in at number 2 is my favorite Halloween film of all time, Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. I know. I just love this movie. It's so unique. This movie's so punk rock to me. It's so bizarre. An Irish Halloween mask seller robs Stonehenge to be able to do witchcraft to kill kids. It's insane. I just love this movie so much, and I actually think that the score is one of the best that John Carpenter has ever created. To be able to create this almost computer synth-like horror score is something so unique. I don't know, I just think that Halloween 3 is awesome, and I'm really glad. I usually make jokes that I miss it when everybody hated this film because I felt cool for liking it, but the truth is, it's about damn time. Halloween 3 is one of the most unique horror films I've ever seen. Now, you're probably wondering, what is my number 1? Is it that guy? No, it's not Friday the 5. What do I think is one of the greatest horror sequels ever that's not a part 2? It's easy. The number 1 greatest horror sequel that's not a part 2, and needed to be number 1 on this list, is George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. You gotta give it up to Day of the Dead. You can not only say that Day of the Dead embodies the zombie genre in a lot of ways, but also the 1980s. This film works on every single level. One of the things that I love so much about Day of the Dead is the music. It's totally different from what you would hear from Dawn or Night, and it works so well. There's almost this comforting horror sound to the score of Day of the Dead that really just works so well. The cast is impeccable. The zombie effects are the best possibly ever done in a horror film. I usually always say I think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 when Tom Savini comes to mind, but more and more so lately, you have to think about Day of the Dead. If you haven't seen Day of the Dead in a long time, I beg of you, go back and watch it. I think it's easily one of the best zombie films ever made, and in terms of the 80s, Day of the Dead is a 10 out of 10 movie. So there you go, guys. There is Volume 2 with more Part 2s and also what I think are some of the greatest sequels ever that aren't Part 2s. Gotta give it up for Day of the Dead. I ask you, now that you've done Volume 1, if you've watched this and you drop your comments below, give me some of your favorites that maybe aren't Part 2s, or if you want to give more Part 2s like I did, and also Part 3s, 4s, or 5s, let it rip. I can't wait to hear it. The 1980s is the greatest decade ever for horror, and I'll never be convinced otherwise. Thank you guys for watching this video. This is Old CHH. We'll see you guys very soon. Thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who make videos like this possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you very much.